First, we are learning more about that deadly helicopter crash in Houston's East End. You remember 4 people died, including a child, when that helicopter crashed into a radio tower.
TJ Parker is back in the Second Ward area this morning. TJ, we are getting some new information about the radio tower that the chopper hit. What can you tell us this morning?
Sure, yes. Good morning to you both. And we also know that the NTSB will be back out here investigating today. If they're not already out here, they are going to be picking up some of the wreckage from the debris that is scattered around this residential neighborhood that this crash site is at. Once to push in here, you can still see quite an active investigation. As you can imagine, this is going to be taking place over the next few days, weeks, and months. We're pushing in on Ennis Street here, and it's still dark out right now, but you can see those overhead lights illuminating the crash site where that radio tower fell. And as we learn more about the helicopter involved in this, speaking of that radio tower, we're also learning more about it.
Do you know anything about issues with the lighting on the tower?
Not at this time. I'm not aware. We haven't gotten that far into the investigation. It's a pretty complex scene, so we're being meticulous in how we approach this.
So the Robinson R-44 helicopter went down just before 8 p.m. Sunday. This surveillance video shows the moment it hit a communications tower. The video shows a light illuminated at the top, but the rest of the tower appears dark. Just days before the crash, the Federal Aviation Administration warned pilots through a notice to air missions, also known as a NOTAM, that lighting on the 1,000-foot tower may not be operational. The operator is National Helicopter Solutions. KPRC2 Investigates called the company and the owners of the helicopter and per the FAA, but there were no response to our calls. We learned they only started flying the tours that they do 11 days ago, according to their website.
Tour flights are one of the more dangerous types of aviation, primarily because they are flying in city environments. The experience of the pilots and the professionalism of the outfits varies greatly.
As an aviation expert who has investigated helicopter crashes in the past, how do you look at their start date as playing a role in this accident?
It could be a crucial role. Anytime you investigate an accident, one of the things you look on is the pilot's experience, and a big part of their experience is their local experience.
All right, so of course we've been talking about the investigation, the NTSB being back out here today. So back out here live, you're looking at a makeshift memorial in remembrance of those victims. Again, sadly, 4 people lost their lives, including a child in that helicopter crash. So as for the NTSB, again, they're going to be out here picking up some of that wreckage. They're also asking people if you see wreckage in your home, because they say it has scattered throughout the neighborhood, to let investigators know. And by the way, this investigation could take anywhere from 12 months. So of course, this is a story we're going to continue to stay on top of, and we'll bring you the very latest as it comes in. We're live in the East End this morning. I'm TJ Parker, KPRC 2 News.
All right, thanks, TJ. Yeah, it's a large area and a lot to investigate. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we now want to bring in aviation expert Josh Verde to talk about safety protocols for helicopter pilots.
Yeah, good morning, Josh. You there?
Good morning. How are you both?
Good. So some of the new information that we got was that there was a notice issued to pilots about the lighting. It was sent out on NOTAM. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, was this well known?
Sure. And yes, you are pronouncing it correctly. It's called a NOTAM. And if you think about it, it's kind of like a memorandum to all pilots. Before they depart for their flight, whether it's a helicopter flight or a fixed wing flight, all pilots are required to get the information pertinent to where they are operating. And NOTAMs are part of that. And NOTAMs can tell pilots about closed runways, construction, anything that might affect the safety of flight. And lighting changes on obstacles are definitely a category of NOTAMs that are available to pilots. But here's the catch. Sometimes pilots are just absolutely inundated with NOTAMs. There are so many of them that it's possible a pilot could miss a notice. So in this case, we don't really know. That'll be part of the NTSB's investigation to see just what the pilot did pre-flight in terms of seeing what the NOTAMs were.
That was going to be my question is, I mean, are you sitting in the cockpit when you get that information before you take off, and then you have coordinates that you're probably supposed to put in to know, hey, when I'm in this general area, this is what I need to watch out for?
That's you, Amy. You bring a really good point up. No one is going to key in latitude and longitude and say, okay, this obstacle is not lighted for my trip. What is more likely to happen is that the pilot would use aeronautical charts, which are widely available, that depict all of the obstacles, and say, well, for this route of flight, I need to fly at a minimum altitude of, let's say, 1,200 feet to avoid all of the obstacles, whether or not they are lighted. And that's usually the practice. And so you either change your route of flight or your altitude.
And so that's what they would use in order to avoid, like in this case, a radio tower.
Correct. And there's actually a great deal of tools available to pilots in the cockpit, depending on what instrumentation is installed. Some will actually alert you if you're near an obstacle and a collision hazard exists.
So are there any additional risks associated with private touring helicopters as opposed to commercial military helicopters? I mean, we heard them mentioning that, like, touring through downtown, because you're going through a city area, it's just considered more dangerous, right?
Yeah, and some of it really comes down to the nature of these flights. The whole point of aerial tours in a helicopter is to get you down low, to see features of Houston that are of interest, and maybe do a flight around downtown. And so those are inherently lower altitude flights. When you are operating a helicopter at lower altitudes, a different set of hazards becomes apparent. In this case, we have, towers, buildings, depending on how low they're operating. So there's a different set of hazards for helicopter pilots that they must be aware of and look out for. And one of the main hazards they have to be aware of are obstacles such as radio or television towers.
Yeah, when we were first going over this yesterday in our newsroom, people were like, wow, I mean, do helicopters fly at night a lot? And we're like, yeah, I mean, if you look up, you see them. Not sure if, that makes it inherently more dangerous for sort of these touring private groups when it's nighttime, less visibility.
In a perfect world, every helicopter pilot, whether they're flying during the day or at night, is trained to the same standard and is familiar with the area they're flying. That I can't emphasize that enough. That's actually really, really huge for pilots that fly, let's say, helicopters at low altitude. Knowing where you operate your helicopter is important, because that local knowledge will help pilots, in addition to charts, of course, will help pilots avoid obstacles. But, let's just say, and I don't know if this is the case with this particular operator, but let's just say they had a new pilot from out of town and said, look, I need you to fly an aerial tour flight. Go ahead, have fun and give them a good show.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing per se illegal about that, but the burden falls on the pilot to ensure that they know their route of flight, that they know where they're operating this helicopter and what hazards exist. And, part of this investigation will involve figuring out just what the pilot did pre-flight to ensure that he or she did what was required to ensure safety.
Yeah, Josh Verde, all good information. And in the coming days and weeks, we hope that we'll learn more of those details as the NTSB investigates this deadly crash. Thank you so much.
Thank you.